Majority of conflicts in a relationship happen because we lose connection with the element of presence. I'll just explain how does this happen and what can be done to restore that presence which creates harmony in relationships. So usually the conflict is that when two people are communicating and no real communication is happening between the two, in the sense that both are stimulated, there's a lot of emotional turbulence, therefore there's no communication happening. How does this happen? If we see this process, if we see what and all is happening, how this whole dynamic is taking place, the awareness can bring us back to our element of presence. So it usually happens like this, that when we are interacting with another person and we are not operating from presence but from fear, that fear is an image or the idea of the other person. In that moment, we are not seeing what is, but we are seeing what should be. There is a conflict, there is a gap between what is and what should be. And the frustration is that in the image, we are not able to accept what is, and we just want what should or should not be. So let's say that one person says something and the other person perceives it from their own lens of limitation, let's say from fear, from extreme sensitivity. So they immediately project an image of the other person, which is an idea. It is not that the other person has projected an image onto them, but it is the first person, the second person who is perceiving has created an image of the first person. It is a little complicated, so pay attention. Now what happens is this person who has perceived a certain thing as an insult or criticism or rejection or anything, this person immediately creates an image. So no communication is actually happening between the two because this person is now communicating with an image. Now, when this person is communicating with an image, the other person, the first person who said something which triggered the second person, that first person also creates an image of the second person. So now, even the first person is just communicating with the idea of the second person, and second person is communicating with the idea of the first person. So what is happening? No communication is happening because there is no presence. There are only images. And each person is communicating with a projection of their own image. In other words, each person is just communicating with themselves. So usually what happens in relationships, there is this acrimonious exchange where nobody is listening to anybody. So some things are said from this side, the other party is not listening, and the other party says something which this person is not listening. So Ramesh would say, when the ego talks, the ego listens. Now, what can one do in such a situation? If one can simply be alert, be present. They can see that what they have done is project an image onto this person and see that there is no communication happening. In that vision, in that light of awareness, the image dissolves, the image drops. And the moment image drops, all the attributes associated with the image, like defensiveness, blaming, shaming, or projecting any kind of anger or temper onto another person, or saying unkind things, all that begins to drop. So when the image drops, one is left with oneself. So there is already an inward movement. Now this inward movement is not shutting down. It is not internalization. It is simply becoming aware of the core principle that is illuminating this whole setup. And that is the true I, or the pure consciousness. So just being aware of that consciousness, you become the consciousness, you become the presence. And the moment you are the presence, all the agenda to hit, attack, take revenge, shame, blame, project guilt on, all of that content just drops. There is quietness. And usually it is seen that when this happens with one person, even in most of the cases, I would say, even the other person drops the image too. And then there is presence with presence. Or in other words, there is unification or recognition of that one primordial consciousness that is creating this whole interplay, this whole dynamic. And in that recognition, there is peace, there is love, there is compassion, there is trust, there is safety. There is safety. So there is no need to throw, to project, to fight, to shame, blame, guilt, or put any of the impermanent attributes onto another person. In other words, the images drop. They simply drop through the awareness of one's own core principle or self, which manifests as presence. And in that element of presence, the nervous system, body, mind is naturally relaxed. And as I said, that it is not shut down, it is not withdrawal, it is not dissociation, because one is fully present to the moment. All it is this peace which says that I am not going to engage in a manner where I have to project an image of the other person. I'm not going to live with the idea of another person, but I'm going to see them as they are and I'm going to accept them as they are. When I see them as they are, in that acceptance there is pure love. Now, according to the society, according to the world, this may be wrong, or this may be enabling, or this may be traumatic. The society, people, according to their own conditions, may give it attributes. But you know deep down that you have put down your defenses because there is no need to protect anything anymore. When we are trying to protect something, that we don't even know what we are trying to protect, but when we try to protect something within us, that is when we launch this image as a defense mechanism. And that is when the rupture happens in relationships. That is when the communication breaks. Because then we are just communicating with our own projected image, and there is no communication happening between two people. It is only when there is no reactivity and the two are in presence that true communication happens. And that process is what we call in psychology as repair. So, rupture and repair are a part of healthy relationships. With mindfulness, with the element of presence, the portion for rupture is shorter and repairs are quicker, and the overall quality of relationship is healthy, full of calm, full of peace, and the two people can enjoy. And now, this is not just limited to romantic relationships, it can extend to friendships, it can extend to a parent and a child relationship, it can extend to your co-workers or whoever you are with in your immediate vicinity. It can be with anybody. The whole idea is to come back home, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, come back home to your element of pure presence, because that presence is not conditioned. It just is. And that's the beauty, because any idea of conditioning is of the mind, and mind operates from this defensiveness. I'm talking about the thinking mind, the obsessive mind, the anxious mind. It comes from this place of self-protection, a ghost, an image that it is trying to protect. And in that illusion of trying to protect something that is not seen, that is not known, that has no concrete existence, it is like a ghost that comes up and goes. In trying to protect that, it creates ruptures in relationships. So relationships can actually be a mirror that can help you to go to your most natural state. In fact, they can become a pathway to awakening. Relationships can teach you a lot about yourself, about your patterns. And when I say patterns and all these things, these are just images that you have been creating as child, and now it's become a habit. So these images are defenses which served you during your childhood, but now they are of no use, because to the nervous system it feels threatening. For example, a criticism from another person, and when you have an image activated, can feel life-threatening. It can feel as if I'm about to die. This person is going to kill me. And the nervous system or the brain, the highly animalistic part of the brain, which I think is called amygdala, can just override the rational part, which is the frontal lobes, and perceive it as an attack and then react. So what happens is, when you are interacting with an image, this process of rupture between the relationship, the disconnection between the relationship, lengthens. And anything which is stretched far eventually snaps. So, the moment of awareness of what is happening can actually save the relationship, can save the thread. Even if one person drops the defenses, drops the reactivity, drops the image, the relationship comes to its normalcy. The repair process starts happening naturally. Why? Because presence is our most natural state, and repair is being in presence. When two people are totally present to each other, not to the idea of each other, but to each other as they are, with total acceptance. That is beautiful relationship. That is the most nurturing relationship. That is the most wholesome, fulfilling relationship. And again, it doesn't have to be just a romantic relationship. It can be any relationship. So, what is the solution? The solution is just going inwards and seeing what is happening. And what is happening will reveal the truth, will take you back home to your place of rest and calm, which is the presence.